Hey horror fans, picture this. A movie so brutally realistic that the director gets hauled into court, charged with actually murdering his own actors on camera. Police seize the film, countries ban it left and right, and people swear it's a real snuff flick. But it wasn't fake deaths that made it infamous, it was something even darker. Welcome to the twisted tale of the most notorious horror film ever made, right here at Midnight Horror Vault, where we dig into the shadows of cinema that most people are too scared to touch. If you're loving these deep dives already, smash that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss another forbidden story from the vault. Trust me, by the end of this, you'll be questioning everything you thought you knew about horror. It all started back in 1980 in Italy, when a director named Ruggero Deodato decided to take the cannibal horror trend to a whole new level. He'd already had some success with a film called Last Cannibal World, but he wanted to push boundaries further. What he created was Cannibal Holocaust, a movie shot like a raw documentary that blurred the lines between fiction and nightmare. The story kicks off with an anthropologist named Harold Monroe heading deep into the Amazon rainforest to track down a missing American film crew. These guys were out there filming indigenous tribes, supposedly capturing the truth about cannibalism in the wild. But when Monroe finds their footage, it reveals something way more horrifying than any tribe ever could. The crew wasn't just observing. They were provoking, exploiting, and crossing every ethical line in the book. Deodato structured the whole thing in two parts: the rescue mission in crisp color, then switching to gritty handheld 16mm footage that feels like you're right there in the jungle with them. It was groundbreaking, the kind of found footage style that would explode decades later with movies like The Blair Witch Project. But back then, nobody had seen anything this raw or unforgiving. Deodato didn't mess around with production. He took a small crew and mostly unknown actors into the real Amazon rainforest in Colombia, using actual indigenous people from local tribes to make it feel authentic. The budget was tiny, just around $100,000, but the ambition was massive. They filmed with shaky handheld cameras to mimic a real documentary crew gone rogue. The cast included Robert Kerman as the professor, along with a handful of American and Italian actors playing the doomed filmmakers, Alan Yates and his team, who turn out to be the real monsters of the story. What made it hit so hard was how Deodato mixed real violence with staged horror. He included actual animal killings on screen, things like a turtle being butchered or a monkey being shot, to crank up the realism. He later called that decision stupid and regretted it deeply, but at the time, he thought it would make the movie impossible to look away from. The jungle heat, the bugs, the isolation, it all added to the chaos. Actors dropped out, fights broke out on set, and the whole thing felt as dangerous as the story itself. The soundtrack by Riz Ortolani even had a haunting main theme that became a surprise pop hit called More. Everything about Cannibal Holocaust screamed innovation, but it was playing with fire. When it finally hit theaters in Italy on February 7, 1980, the reaction was explosive. Audiences were stunned. Some walked out in disgust. Others couldn't stop talking about it. It raked in serious cash right away, about $2 million in Italy alone before the hammer came down, and over time it pulled in huge numbers worldwide, even 21 million in Japan. But success came with a brutal price. Just days after the premiere, Italian authorities seized every print of the film. Deodato, the screenwriter, and the producers were charged with obscenity. Rumors flew that it was an actual snuff film. Real. Murders caught on camera. French media hyped the idea that the actors who died on screen had vanished, fueling the fire. Police investigated, and Deodato found himself in court facing not just censorship charges, but whispers of murder accusations. The footage looked so convincing, with its graphic violence, sexual assaults, and those real animal deaths, that people genuinely believed lives had been lost. It got banned in the UK as part of the infamous Video Nasties list, pulled from shelves. in Australia, South Africa, and dozens of other countries. Some places still have restrictions today, though many lifted the bans years later with heavy cuts. Here's where the story takes its craziest turn, the moment that cemented Cannibal Holocaust as legendary. To prove his innocence, Deodato had to bring the dead actors into court, alive and well. He even showed the special effects tricks behind the most shocking scenes. The murder charges evaporated, and the obscenity convictions got overturned after a couple of years. The film was released again in Italy with an adults-only rating, but the damage was done. The controversy turned it into a cultural flashpoint. Critics were split right down the middle. Some praised it as a brilliant takedown of media sensationalism and Western exploitation, pointing out how Deodato was inspired by real news coverage of terrorist groups like the Red Brigades that felt staged for cameras. He wanted to ask a simple but brutal question: who are the real cannibals? The tribes in the jungle or the so-called civilized filmmakers who destroy everything they touch? Others slammed it as racist, misogynistic garbage that reveled in gore without any real point. Animal rights groups condemned the on-screen killings, and even today, those scenes make the movie almost unwatchable for a lot of people. At midnight, Horror Vault. We always say horror should challenge you, and this one does it like a punch to the gut. In the years that followed, Cannibal Holocaust built this insane cult following. It became the crown jewel of the Italian cannibal film wave, influencing everything from found footage hits to modern extreme horror. Directors like Eli Roth paid homage in movies such as The Green Inferno. Unofficial sequels popped up, video games got announced, and the film even popped up in TV shows like Euphoria years later. Fans hunted down uncut versions on bootleg VHS, tapes, trading stories about how it messed with their heads. It ranked high on lists of the greatest grindhouse and horror films, with some calling it a misunderstood masterpiece of exploitation cinema. But there was a clear fall, too. Deodato's career never quite recovered the same mainstream shine. He made other films, sure, but this one overshadowed everything. The ethical questions lingered, about animal cruelty, about pushing actors and real people too far, about whether art like this does more harm than good. By the time home video made it easier to watch, the shine had faded for some. It went from underground sensation to a movie people warn you about. Don't watch it alone, or at all if you have a weak stomach. Re-releases on Blu-ray and 4K brought it back into the spotlight, but the debates never stopped. Was it ahead of its time or just too far over the line? That's the beauty of it here at Midnight Horror Vault. We love films that make you think long after the credits roll. Looking back now, Cannibal Holocaust feels like a time capsule of an era when horror was raw and dangerous. It predated the big found footage boom by almost 20 years, proving that shaky cameras and real footage could scare people more than any monster makeup. Yet its fall came from the very things that made it rise: the unrelenting shock value, the real blood, the moral gray areas. Deodato himself said he never intended it to be more than a gripping cannibal story. But the layers of commentary on journalism and imperialism snuck in anyway. Today, in our polished streaming world of jump scares and CGI ghosts, a film like this stands out like a scream in the silence. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about entertainment and exploitation. Would it get made in 2026? Probably. Not without massive backlash and endless edits. But that's why it endures. It reminds us that the best horror doesn't just entertain, it disturbs, it lingers, and it makes you wonder about the darkness in all of us. So there you have it, the, complete rise and fall of Cannibal Holocaust, the most notorious horror film to ever hit the screen. It climbed to infamy on the backs of controversy and innovation, only to crash under the weight of its own brutality and the questions it raised. If this story hooked you, and you want more Vault Unlocks like this, make sure you're subscribed, and hit the notification bell. Drop a comment below. Have you seen Cannibal Holocaust? Would you watch it knowing everything we just covered, or is it one step too far even for hardcore horror fans? Share this video with your friends who live for the extreme stuff. Let's get the conversation going and keep the Midnight Horror Vault growing. Thanks for hanging out in the dark with me today. Stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep the lights off.